Welcome to the Dark Nook Monster Shop. In this video, I'll show you how to make a spooky Grim Reaper decoration using just cotton and wood glue. Well, and some cheap stuff from the dollar store. This technique is so simple and approachable and cheap, I hope you'll give it a try, because the results look way better than they have any right looking. Here's the materials I'm going to use. I'll need a tray, because this will get messy and drippy. I used some fabric draping I got from the dollar store and some cheesecloth I also got from the dollar store. And this is cotton wool. A cardboard tube from a roll of aluminum foil, a plastic cup, and a plastic Easter egg. Some garden wire, and I was going to use a pumpkin, but I didn't end up using the pumpkin. First, let's make the base. Twist up some garden wire to make 2 arms. And be sure to use your arms to click like and subscribe on this video. Next, mark out a tube-sized spot on the cup, cut a hole in the bottom of the cup for the tube, put the tube in the hole, all the way till it hits the table, and hot glue it into place. Or do like me and poke a hole first, realize that's dumb, and then glue it into place. After that, glue the arm wires in the arm wire holes. Take 1/2 of the plastic Easter egg and glue that to the top of the tube. Now this next part is optional. I poke some holes and push in some wire just to serve as like the rib cage. I want to build up the body a bit, but I don't want a very defined body or skeleton. I just want a hint of one. So I shape the wires around, but I make zero effort to create anything defined or symmetrical. Then I hot glue them in place. I lost the footage of this, so this is from the Tin Man video. Now you could just use the plastic skull from the original dollar store skeleton decoration, but I made a latex mold of it so I can cast it in foam, like this. I trim the teeth a bit and paint the skull black, and when it's dry, I hot glue it onto the front bit of that Easter egg. I'm going to use kebab skewers for the stick part of the scythe. Now, some of you have asked me about cotton wool. It can be found at most pharmacies because, like I said, it's used to line casts on broken arms and legs. It's basically raw cotton that's been cleaned, but that's pretty much it. And that process results in these thin layers of cotton sandwiched together. I pull the layers of cotton apart and then dip them into this mixture of black acrylic paint and wood glue. I smush it around until the cotton is all saturated and let the excess drip back into the tray. Once a piece of cotton is good and saturated with this mixture, then I just lay it over the frame and let it drape down. And that's it. Seriously, that's it. Just this. Over and over and over. I used some different fabric for a little bit of a different look, but this is the whole process. Wet it in the mixture of paint and wood glue, then stick it on the armature where you want it. It's messy and tactile and really satisfying. Now I do this in layers and stages, so the first layer is going to be the body, and once that layer is good and dry, I'll build on top of it, and then I'll wait for that layer to dry and build on top of it, and then wait for that layer to dry and build on top of that. And while you watch me build up all these layers, remember, hit that like button and leave a comment. It really helps out the channel. Now, like I said, I don't want this guy to have a really defined body. I just want you to see a little hint of some kind of body or maybe skeleton in there. So here's how I make the hands. Another cheap mold off Amazon. I poke in bits of cotton soaked in Mod Podge. I do this in uneven and overlapping layers to give it strength when it dries, because it's going to be very thin. And since I have the Mod Podge out anyway, I go ahead and paint a coat of Mod Podge over the whole thing. It's at about this stage that you figure out why I used a cup. I can hang big hunks of fabric off this armature and have them drape down and attach to the cup at the bottom, so as they dry, they add stability. Generally, I try to make stuff that's freestanding, that it doesn't need to be stuck into a base. Don't get me wrong, I love a good sculpt anchored in a base, but I usually aim for more portable decorations, and the way I'm doing this, the Reaper's robe itself will actually become the base that supports it. Now when the hand is dry, I pop it out of the mold. I only have one mold for the right hand, so I'm going to have to cheat. More on that later. I use some of the other fabrics, just to see how they look, and to give it a little texture variation in case there's a spot in the final layer that shows through to a layer underneath. I want there to be a little bit of texture variation, maybe like the fabric is worn and becoming threadbare. I have two right hands now, and I'm going to have to make one of them into a left hand. But first, more soaking and draping. I have to start on the final layer, so I start shaping and adding more detail to this layer. I rough in the wrinkles with my fingers and then refine them with the awl or with a toothpick. And just because I don't like to waste anything, I roll the kebab skewer between my fingers to transfer all the sticky glue and paint onto the stick. Then I poke it through a loop in the wire where the hand's going to be. I decided to use multiple skewers in this process to make the scythe's handle bigger. So I position them and then hot glue them into place. Then I add the wire that will be the blade of the scythe and glue it into place, but I mostly do that just out of frame. Now I attach the hand by hot gluing it into place. I wrap the fingers around the handle of the scythe, and I use the awl to position them before the glue completely cools. Next, I cut the thumb off the right hand, and then I glue the fingers down and leave the pinky finger pointing. Then I just glue the thumb on the other side of the hand, and the radical right hand becomes the extreme left hand. After that, I add a little more sleeve over the edge of where the hands are attached. Then I add some cotton to the scythe's handle to make it look like a big gnarly tree branch. And now for the really cool part. I drape cotton over the wire to make a blade for the scythe. I squeeze it thin and pull it a bit to get a jagged edge. I would tilt my camera up for a better view, but my hands are covered with glue and paint. I shape the cotton to make it look like the blade is organically attached to the handle. I want it to have this sort of sinewy look, like it's growing, not like it's forged out of metal. I add a little more detail to the handle and then let it dry. Now it's time for paint. A little bone white for the hands and face, just a hint on the body. Then I wet mix in some yellowish brown to age the skull. Then I add some brown to the scythe handle. This shouldn't look this good. This is cotton and glue slung over wire and squished, and it looks awesome. I go over it again with a lighter brown, and I'll take that back down with a black wash in a minute. But first I dry brush this great blue over the cloak, and I dry brush a metallic gray over the blade. It's all nice and bright. The colors really pop. So let's fix that with a black wash. This will mute all those bright colors, but it'll still leave a hint of them. And once that's dry, I'm going to add a little white dry brush just to catch those highlights and really make the fabric look worn and threadbare. And then another black wash to mute that white. Finally, I go in and add a little bit of lighter paint to the teeth and some blood to the edge of the blade. And once that's dry, it's all done, and on to the beauty shots. Hey, thanks for checking out my video. Please squish that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment for more spooky and satisfying creature creations.